Hi guys, welcome back. In this video, we continue to look at some useful Python built-in functions for strings. Then we'll see how to format Python strings and how to encode Python strings for non-English languages. At the end of the video, we'll review an important fact about Python strings. Now let's get started. First, let's look at a function to check whether a string begins with another string. For example, we have a string initialized to Python strings. And we check whether a string starts with pith or pyth. And it returns true. That means Python string does begin with pyth. And we also use ends with to check whether a string ends with, for example, ngs, and it does. And starts with and ends with are called string methods because we just call them on a string object like Python strings. What if a string does not start with, for example, pith? As you can expect, it will return false. And Python 3.9 introduced two new methods for removing the prefixes and suffixes of strings. For example, if we call remove prefix with py as the argument, I just typed the wrong method name. Let's just type it again. A little bit too fast. Okay, this time you can see the prefix py was removed and we got thong strings only. And we can also call remove suffix. For example, we remove ngs. And you get Python string. So you may wonder, since we called remove prefix on a string, and a string is Python string, right? Python strings, right? And when we call remove suffix, we should get thong string instead of Python string because py has been removed. So why? Why is that? That means a string has not changed after we called remove prefix. Let's check out. You can see a string is still Python strings. That means the thong strings and Python strings are two new strings. So remove prefix, remove suffix returns a new string, a changed string, and the original string is not changed. And this is true with all other string methods in Python. And we shall go into that further at the end of the video. And sometimes we need to remove spaces at the beginning or at the end of a string, or both. To remove the spaces at the beginning of a string, we use, for example, we have a string ABC with some leading and trailing spaces, and we call the L strip method on this string to remove the leading spaces. And you can see here, we only just get ABC and the trailing methods and the trailing spaces. How about if we call R strip on ABC, and you just get the ABC with the leading spaces, right? Okay. And how about if we just want neither leading or trailing spaces? We just call strip, and spaces on both sides of ABC are removed. Now, let's look at how to format a string, which can be fed to a print function sometimes. And one of the current ways to format a string is by using the so-called formatted string literals. Formatted string literals. For example, we have some variables, name, Jack, age, 35, job, for example, programmer. And let's just write a format string. Name is age, year old, job. So you can see this format string serves as a template with some placeholders here, here, and here. The placeholders are marked by a pair of braces. In between, we insert the name of the variables. And the templates just, you see, glue the values of these variables together to form this final product. By the way, you can feed this formatted string to print, like print. Let's just copy this to save some time. So you can see here, print just print the bare string. Another popular way to format a string is by using the format string method. Format. So for example, A is a string, that is, this is a string. And we can call A format and give it an argument as Python, and the Python will be filled in this placeholder. And you can see the product is, this is a Python string. And you can also fit the format string to print, like print, this is a string. And you just call format directly on this string and fit it with this argument. And you just got the bare string printed. Of course, there can be more than one placeholder, just like A, this is a string, but not a string. And we call format and feed it with Python, Java, the two strings here, and this returns, this is a Python string, but not a Java string. So these two arguments to format are fed to the two placeholders here. You can even specify the position of the arguments by placing a number in between the brackets. For example, A, you know, is And by the way, you may have noticed this combination, a backslash and a single quote. And this is an escape sequence for a single quote within a Python string. I talked about escape sequence in my last video. As we know, the Python interpreter will get confused if there is a single quote standing within the string surrounded by a pair of single quotes. So we need to escape this single quote with this escape sequence. Okay. Now let's format A. Let's call format on A with the arguments Michael, Python. So here you see Michael is for the placeholder number 0, and Python is fed to placeholder number 1. So we can also use variables as arguments to format, like, for example, we have A, like hi, I. Okay, let's escape the single quote again, and name. I love language. And let's call format with name, Michael, language, Python. And you see, I'm Michael. I love Python. Up to now, I have been using English all the time in my examples, but in real production, we need to consider different languages. Like all other programming languages, Python uses Unicode points. Unicode points for representing characters, including the letters in the alphabets of most languages in the world, characters in languages like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese. Unicode is an encoding system for characters and symbols used in various computer programs around the world. It uses the UTF-8 encoding system, which is widely used in programming languages. If you're interested in Unicode, you may follow the link provided in the comments to learn more. Now, I'll use Chinese characters as an example. For example, we have a string like Python. Okay, so this is Chinese for the Python programming language. As you can see, the Python interactive shell displays the string without a problem. But that's because the simplified Chinese language decoder is installed on the system I'm using. It may not be installed on other computer systems though. Before we encode the string with the UTF encoding, let's check its type with Python's built-in type function. Type S, which is class str. We just call it str. So this means S is an object of the str class. Str means obviously string. You may not be familiar with the concept of class right now if you have not learned any object-oriented programming languages before. If that is the case, just think class as the recipe for creating an object. And an object is a container for data and functions to manipulate data. We just mentioned that in our first video. Then let's encode S and put it in a variable called encoded as encode. And the scheme is UTF-8. So let's see what encoded as is. So you can see this kind of line of text. It looks like a string, but it begins with B. So that means this is a bytes object. A bytes object contains a sequence of individual bytes like these. A byte is a basic unit of data represented by ones and zeros in the computer, as we know. And a bytes object contains a sequence of such units. The bytes object starts with the letter B to show that it's a bytes object. In this bytes object, Python is made up of English letters, which fall into the subsets of UTF-8 Unicode called the ASCII code. ASCII code. And the characters in the ASCII encoding do not need special treatments in UTF-8. So that's why they just appear as they are, Python. However, for the Chinese characters, encoding is needed. As you can see, every byte is represented by a slash, a backward slash, plus a hexadecimal number. And the hexadecimal number starts with the letter X to show that it's hexadecimal. And the bytes, the value of the bytes is represented by these numbers, E7, BC, 96, E7. Okay. So if you are new to hexadecimals, you may head on to the article linked in the comments to see to this video. Here you can see every 3 bytes are used to represent a Chinese character. We have 4 Chinese characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have 12 bytes here. You can count yourself. And every 3 bytes are used to represent just 1 Chinese character. But that is not the case with all other languages. For some characters, 2 bytes will be used. For example, S, Sheng, Gitong. Let's just use existing one. Sheng Gitong. And this is French for Python string. Let's encode it. Encode it as S. Let's just call encode on S with, again, the UTF-8 scheme. And I must have just typed something wrong. Encoded as S encode UTF-8. Yeah. Okay, let's see what encoded as is. As you can see here, all other letters in Sheng is just like English letters, but this one is special. So it is specially encoded as C3 and AE. Okay, just 2 bytes. And finally, let's see how we can declare a byte object. It's actually just as simple as bytes object. We start the initialization with a B. This is a bytes object. Note that you cannot initialize a bytes object with non-ASCII characters like bytes object B. Let's just use the string again. And this will cause an exception to be thrown with this error message. Bytes can only contain ASCII literal characters. So if you're interested in operations on the bytes object, you may head on to the Python documentation website. Okay, after playing around with all the above magics, let's just learn an important fact about Python strings. A Python string is an immutable object. What does that mean? For example, we have a string and a string, and we assign m to n. So that means now m and n refers to the same string objects as shown in this diagram. M, n now points to a string at the same time. However, you cannot change a string by simply assign another string to m. If you inspect n, you can see that n is still a string. It has not changed to another string. So as shown here. Now, m points to another string, while n still points to a string. So what does that mean? That means we cannot expect to create a function to change the string passed to it as an argument. You need to return the change string to the calling function. For example, we have a lowercase string. For example, all letters in this string are in lowercase. And we have a function like to uppercase a string, and we create a variable like uppercase string, a string upper, and let's print uppercase string. So this method calls the upper string methods on a string, which is passed in as an argument. And the upper method turns a string into uppercase, turns all the letters in string into uppercase. So let's call to upper string method to uppercase method and feed it with the lowercase string as the argument. So as you can see, all the letters in this string are turned into the uppercase. Of course, this statement is false because all the letters in this string are now in uppercase. So now let's see whether a lowercase string has changed to this string. It has not. So that means we cannot just, try to change the letters in this string into uppercase by passing it into the to uppercase methods as an argument. So what can we do if we do want an uppercase string as a result? We just define the function in a different way. To uppercase, still a string as the parameter, and we just return a string to upper. That will do the trick. For example, now we assign the results of calling to uppercase with lowercase string as the argument. And if we just inspect B, we'll see B now is all letters in this string are in lowercase in uppercase. Of course, if the original string is no longer needed, we can achieve the effect of changing the original string by storing the changed string in the same variable. So if we just, want to the lowercase string become uppercase, we can just call the method on it and assign the return value of this method to the original variable. So now lowercase string becomes uppercase. Okay, guys, that ends my second video about Python strings. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give me a like. Welcome to subscribe my channel for more interesting stuff about Python. See you next time.